and Dustin was planning on joining.
Oh, and you were.
Here I am.
So it is working.
No,
Oh,
my Zoom
Oh, you're
is
just
being
like-
presented,
yeah.
but the owl piece isn't working.
I hear it. Yes.
Yeah, the volume's better. So, hello.
Hello.
So today, here's our agenda. Yeah. So we are going to talk about a new committee member, talk about revenue, strategic planning updates, and then spend most of the time prepping our 2024 budget. So Allie Edwards unfortunately just texted me that emergency came up, she couldn't make it, but so we have a new committee member. Her name is Allie Edwards. She moved to Hudson about a year ago and was looking to get involved more in the city. She's worked as a housing navigator, so she's worked with different like social service agencies helping people locate housing. And that's actually why she said she can't come tonight, it's because she's helping a family find a house. So she had to go do that. So she had submitted a letter to HCPA. They approved her 2 meetings ago, and so looking forward to having her join. It's kind of a good time of year too, since we're kind of starting the 2024 budget stuff. So hopefully next time that she will be with us, and then y'all can meet her in person. Yeah, we had talked a bit. I don't quite know, but that would be a good question. Yeah, next time she's here. Yeah, and I know she had worked, I think, with also like immigration support, and I think maybe kind of found her way through that. But yeah. Next, if we want to talk about revenue pieces. First one, so Usha and Rebecca, I know you all met to talk about banks. Do you guys want to kind of fill us in on that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, what we did, we made a list of banks
Mhm.
that we're going to see, foundations. And we were just at the point of discussing businesses,
Okay.
some of the bigger hotels.
Oh, cool.
And we were just talking about how we're gonna, who we're gonna approach, and once we have the brochure, we
Mhm.
develop.
Yeah,
So a lot of this, you will have to make appointments.
right, yeah,
You just can't walk in and they don't.
yeah.
What?
I just texted you with something about housing navigators.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
And a lot of the people that you'll have to see aren't even in Hudson,
Okay,
on the banks. Usually that person is in the head office.
right,
whatever that might be.
yeah,
So with the foundations, I think that might be easier to make a contact.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, thank you for your patience getting the brochure together. So I had a draft. This is kind of part of the trifold, and then this is the other side. And Rebecca had given me some design and text feedback, so I have to incorporate that, and then I can print that out. The other thing.
Are you gonna get it? Or just-
So I was gonna see what the minimum that Pro printers would do.
Thank you. There's locks over there?
Yeah.
Oh, the right door. I don't know
This
how
is
to-
probably it for this meeting, right?
Jeff's
Anybody-
coming.
Oh, one more person coming. Great, thank you.
Good, that's
I'll show you how to do it.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Good. So we're talking about, Usha and Rebecca kind of made a list of like foundations and banks to approach for funding. So we have like a brochure that I've got to make some edits on, so thank you. But I was gonna say Pro Printers has a small minimum. I'd use them for some glossy ones. If they want like 1 million done, then I would just, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, they're very nice.
Okay, then I'll try and get maybe, I don't know, how many do you think? 30?
Well, 30 they call it,
Okay,
but,
I would have to do 100.
you might have to do 100. Which, I mean, we can use them for other things, like, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
just be specific, 'cause the way it's organized, I think it contains information that was useful for. lots of
Right.
different-
I feel like if it was 30 of these cut and folded, they would do it.
You think?
Because that's like to make them all look perfect and be
Yeah.
folded and nice and everything like that.
Well, and be actually printed like on some kind of.
Okay, nice.
cardstock
Yeah.
or something, not
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
30 is.
It's worth asking.
yeah, and also,
I mean, sure.
30 is not very many. If you
Yeah.
give one to a bank, to the bank that you go see.
You might have to
And
give a
they
couple
say,
to them. so
well,
that-
like, I need
Yeah.
one to send to the head.
Right.
Right.
Minimum.
I mean, maybe then also it's worth thinking about if any of this information is like subject to change, then I don't know if I should take it off. Do you know what I mean? Like if the minimum's like 100 or something, then maybe, I don't know, maybe names shouldn't be on it, because those could change in a year.
I don't know, maybe I'm being optimistic, but it seems to me there's a lot of potential uses for this
Mhm.
brochure that within a year we could definitely distribute
Okay.
100.
And I guess maybe also thinking about, maybe reviewing it again with the mindset of what if a funder's not reading it, but maybe someone who wants to engage, like, you know, a member of the public or a
I think that's
resident.
why,
or-
remember I suggested bringing the funding in so that it's not like I don't think it has to be only a funding brochure.
Right.
I wasn't even reading it.
Okay, yeah.
I was looking at it, like a general purpose
Right,
thing that includes funding information, also that's helpful, I think, so that the people working on putting out.
right, right. Okay, cool. So I'll incorporate your edits. I'll kind of read it through again with the mindset of, you know, is this a broader audience, and then print it.
Looks great.
Okay, cool,
Is
thanks.
it trifold?
Yeah.
Two-sided trifold?
Yeah, I printed it out and it makes sense the way the folding is. But I have some more edits from Rebecca to do. So, and the other thing too, that kind of ties into this, I'll mention now. So the strategic plan, I've been talking about it for months. It's getting close. It's at that point now where it's like, I have like 60 pages and I pretty much have to just go through and like, we have all this data and like, I don't want to just dump it, you know what I mean? But how to like actually pull out key facts that are most important. And I think that the thing that'll be useful is that also having this online. So if someone does want to read 60 pages on how it's actually funded and structured and all that stuff, and that'll also be online. So hoping to maybe finish this in August.
You're talking about the strategic plan for the trust.
Yeah. So
You know, because I know there's also cities.
yeah, this was like our basically just kind of, you know, like any organization has their plan, right? So this is incorporating kind of like what's the purpose of the housing trust fund, what are the powers, getting into like why we need it, how it functions, a bunch of housing data. So honestly, by now the data from our like 2021 plans even outdated. So just kind of like updating it and then getting into like some goals, that the goals we talked about in January and February, and then some of our like procedures for selecting funders. Because I think, you know, the idea had been that we'd slow down in 2023 and just really focus on procedures and governance and goals. And so I'm thinking if I get this draft done by maybe a little bit after Labor Day, then we can kind of finish out 2023 having some more conversation about those pieces. So I think also that this kind of getting that online might also work well with getting brochures out to people. So, Make sure Dustin didn't join. Okay. Any other thoughts about that? Okay, then I'll move on. So the lodging tax, we're still looking at.
Yes, you're definitely gonna raise it, try to raise it
Mhm,
a percentage point
okay,
and maybe dedicate that entire percentage point or 100,000, whatever
mhm,
comes first,
yeah. Okay,
something like that,
yeah,
What's the tax now?
4,
You're gonna make it
5. And it's still lower than most
Yeah.
lodging taxes in the region.
oh, really? I thought we were one of the higher,
No, I
Oh.
mean, well, the ones that have, it.
yeah.
But Vicky pointed out that like well, it's Massachusetts, but
Well,
everything.
Massachusetts
Yeah,
has 6.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, why not be like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the Berkshire is, oh, it's all over that, they have a,
Seems fair to me.
It's
What's
just,
wrong with Massachusetts?
Yeah.
well, just because it's not our legislature.
yeah,
But,
but no, I don't think we have to go before the
oh,
state
no,
on this. It's funny, I just wrote Chris before I came here.
yeah.
To go over some of these things. I do not think, we do have it passed as a, as a law,
Mhm,
but I don't think it has to go before the state
Okay,
for approval.
okay.
So something of that order.
Yeah, I was looking at, so the lodging tax, it was, I guess it brought in around 500,000
Mhm.
for the 2021 number,
Hmm.
right? Because you calculate it, and that's the most recent one.
Right.
And I think Heather, or the VA, anticipated 550,000
For this
for this year. So I was looking at, like, even if we asked for, like 15%, you're still looking at like over $80,000.
Pardon me 1 second, you guys. Can somebody let us in?
Hey, Jeffrey.
$1,000.
Hey, can somebody let us in? We're
for
outside.
Whatever the increase provides, whichever
Right.
one's higher.
Right.
Yeah. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, but we're literally outside. Can somebody let us in?
Oh,
It's outside. Oh, they're in.
The door locked again.
It's okay, I'll fix it, I'll do it a lot later.
Jeffrey and Dustin are here, but they're wandering around. My bad. Oh yeah, I've got missed calls. I guess we don't need the door. Okay. We'll wait a second, let them come in and then have the conversation.
But who's missing that? Just I remember.
Angelique.
Hey.
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello. Sorry about that, my bad.
trying to share the back, and I think you recognize.
You don't need to look at me. Okay, well, hello, welcome. Glad to have y'all here. So we touched on, oops, sorry.
Just FYI, I don't think I was picking up.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I thought you could myself.
Just talking to myself. No, unfortunately, it's not working. The wire's a little finicky. So we just briefly mentioned we have a new committee member who unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight, but Allie Edwards is a new member. She's a housing navigator and helps people find housing. Works in Albany now, so that's why she couldn't make it here. But hopefully the next meeting she'll be here. And we talked about Usha and Rebecca are working on, they made a list of like banks and foundations they can approach to request for funding, and we worked on a brochure. And so talked about that. And then we were just talking about the lodging tax for revenue. Tom and the council's already been looking at a request to increase the percentage.
Correct.
So currently,
Currently it's 4%.
4%, that's paid by the lodger. So,
Right.
We're gonna try to raise it to 5 and dedicate most of that to this.
You're saying dedicate that extra percent.
Well, I think it's
The increased revenue.
Right.
either 1% or all of it.
Or
I mean, either.
$100,000 or,
Yeah,
That was what I threw out.
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I just want to think that, you know. Bid for the lodging package, like, it's sort of like a correspondence of lodging. Housing and lodging.
Sure.
I feel like it's really strong, revenue source for this, and like, I don't know what, research already. What the ones are for it, but it's for what allocation look like in other funds,
Mhm.
but we really understood.
yeah, because that could be an easy sell to the council. Isn't it? So.
For instance, the hotels are being increased.
Can we be heard?
Yes, mhm, yes. We're on Zoom and,
They'll probably say something about it, but I can't see why. Just like the first, when we actually started the lodging tax, they were all up in arms, but first of all, the tourism wasn't as strong then. But secondly, it's just something they have to collect, it's not gonna impact otherwise, you know?
They probably see it as like a pressure of.
Exactly, but it's not, it shouldn't be.
I guess, but also like when are the hotel rates are like, some of them are $800 a night.
Yeah.
And that's probably the problem, because there's a lot of other places you go, and there's like a value added tax.
There's so many taxes,
Yeah, and
especially in big cities. Really.
And so also an update on it, our short-term rental. So we hired a part-time administrator to help implement the short-term rental tax. And so we hired Peyton. And so I'm collaborating with the treasurer's office, but she's officially under me. And so I've been working closely with her and the treasurer's office to look at all the short-term rental lodging and basically trying to get a hold of who's operating fairly, who's paying the tax, who's not. And so also, I think that might also result maybe, down the road in a few months. Yeah.
Is the rate the same for short term rental as well?
Yes, yes.
And then the other pieces for revenue that we were looking at, so still planning on going to the IDA, since they have funds, that they receive from their pilot application, the grants.
And since Rebecca was on it, I mean, I think the case can be made, or Rebecca could even make it, that was kind of implicit in some of those pilots, right? That, it was affecting housing, and this is a way to make up for
Absolutely. I
it.
mean, yeah, it's common that, the developer either just have have their own annual donation directly to a housing organization, or,
And again, I think it's gonna be a question of making the case to the IDA, and, the current group, I think will go for it, but you never know what's gonna happen with the next two, council members. I don't know, it's just like, I think if you make the case that it's definitely tied into what these pilots will give, in
Yeah.
the spirit of these pilots, then they really should be doing something.
it's for the community benefits.
Exactly.
And I also think, like, some people have talked on the IDA trying to get some feelers. They say their focus is like workforce development, but when I've talked to like local businesses, like, we can't get people to work here, we have the jobs, but there's no housing for
Right.
them.
Exactly, so it's another part of the same thing.
I've
Right.
heard that probably 3 times in the past 2 weeks from just like being like at my dentist's office or whatever. And I think that's kind of the missing piece more than anything right now for us is the housing.
We can make like a bumper sticker, like no job without house. Something like that, Nobody work without.
That was the gist of that whole Berkshire Taconic Skilling the Gap conference last year, was that like,
Yeah,
it wasn't even focused on workforce development, it was really like housing and daycare. You don't have
that's
housing and
right.
daycare,
Housing and daycare.
nothing else can really
Yeah,
happen because no families can live in that place and work there.
yeah.
So it's,
And
And again, I hate to always be talking about Provincetown, Massachusetts, but it's like, I really feel like Hudson is just following in the path of Provincetown, Massachusetts, which literally has seasonal workers that are brought in from other countries because there's no house. And even with that, there's, there's still a shortage of workers because.
There was a hilarious but sad article in the New York Times about Branson, Missouri, could no longer house all the people who work at all those places there. And their solution was to buy them all scooters, because they didn't have, so that
Right.
they could live further away.
Right,
But, it's the same
right.
dilemma handled in a much different way.
I'm curious also, sorry, this is really off topic-ish, but, I keep wondering, like, some of the businesses that in the past have been more sustained by, like, local, by, like, people who live here and are sort of local. I feel like I see them, like, suffering, because there's just not as many people who are like, you're all this.
Yeah, part of the county housing task force, one of the things we're doing now is need a employer survey with Berkshire Taconic. We're trying to give that out to local employers, and they're trying to do it by like invite only, like so getting employees who want to fill it out and sending it to them, so they don't get a lot of, I don't know, bad responses, I guess. So that'll be something that we can do too, like once we get that final survey, if you guys want to send it out to employers, and that should also give us some more data as well. I mean, it's for the county, but still it's relevant. So, and then the other piece for revenue is been doing a lot of communication with other housing trust funds. So in general, Massachusetts is the best example of small town housing trust funds, largely because their state has direct funding sources for it. And so I've been in communication, trying to get, some of people have been helpful, some people have still, it's summer vacation, still waiting to hear back, but just getting a sense of like how they run them, where they get the funding from. So I'll share that, like hopefully next week I'll have some more answers from them. But in New York, a lot of us are all in the starting phases. So I've been part of like a group of people who have been making housing trust funds over the past year or so. And we've been looking at like what possibilities there are at the state for other revenue sources. So for example, like the Community Preservation Act, that's the right one, right? Basically, like you're allowed to, if a municipality votes to have it, you could get like a small tax that puts funds towards preservation of open space. But Massachusetts also allows it to go for housing. And Long Island got permission to do this, some towns in Long Island, so they're funding their housing trust fund with it. And so that's one of the things that like looking at a state level or some other things like making the lodging taxes easier to change. So I'll keep you all updated if anything happens there. Any other thoughts about revenue?
Along the same, I brought this up last time with the, what do they call it?
CEDC?
No,
HTC?
yeah,
Yeah.
What about appropriation? I mean, with the argument about
The workforce piece.
workforce develop, like, because that's their mission, or was their mission until they changed their mission. Does anybody know what their actual?
Their mission statement is published on, like it's printed on,
Yeah, no, I know.
posted on the website.
Yeah, you know, but
It doesn't say a lot about workforce.
what does it say about it?
When you get it.
I'm looking it up. We can keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put that in the thought. I think maybe maybe when we have more, I don't know, something to think about. Yeah, we'll think about that.
Local development corporations for the purposes of sustaining, promoting, and enabling business investment and employment opportunities, as well as strengthening the city of Hudson's tax base to help secure its future.
Well, in order to strengthen the tax base, we need more residents. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's their preferred way of spending money, but
Yeah.
they can be added to the
Or
possibility.
their preferred way of increasing the tax rate.
Okay, so, next thing, so just for Dustin and Jeff, just want to give an update that I know we've been talking about strategic plan. I've got a bulk of it done. It's like, I've got the big draft with all the messy data. So I've got to spend some time cleaning it up and condensing it. And then I think that'll help us also make some decisions for looking towards next year. So we're gonna spend the rest of the meeting talking about budget for next year. I apologize, I did not print things. I did not realize that I don't have access to the printer after 4 o'clock anymore at the firehouse. So okay, so I'm gonna walk you through the process for the budget and then I'll show you a draft. And then basically the point of today is to kind of figure out what information do you all want in order for you to decide on the final budget in August. So I can spend the next month getting information or answering questions. So the process looks like today we'll meet to kind of discuss it. So in August, I'll spend the first half getting any answers, finalizing a draft. I'll send it out to you August 21st. Then you guys can have like a week or so to look at it, and then we can vote on it at our August meeting if you want to approve the budget. After we approve it, then in September, I would show it to the BEA. If we're asking them for money, that would be included in there. Based on what the BEA says, then we revise it and then submit it to HCBPA. And then they would review it in October, because we get to have 3 boards approve our funds. Any questions about this process?
I think it's good to start now. Glad you're doing it this way.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you the draft. And again, the questions I want you to be thinking about is like, what information do you want to know? What is unclear, et cetera, stuff like that. So this,
I'm sorry, Michelle,
Yes.
before you get started, is it gonna be much different from what we presented to us previously?
like, you mean last year?
Yes.
No, pretty similar. Yeah, this year's gonna be a lot easier than last year. So this is the line item, and then this is like the 5-year. So this first column is what we had budgeted for 2023. This is the actual, and then this is what I'm suggesting for 2024. So that first line is overhead operating, what we're gonna pay to HCPA for audit, legal, bookkeeping, et cetera. I'm suggesting keep that the same. The next one is my salary. So there's like a 2% increase as part of the civil service. Of the civil service thing. So that would be an increase there.
Only 2?
Yeah, pretty sure.
2.5.
You think it's 2.5?
I mean, Heather will know that.
Yeah.
I would think 2.5.
Okay. This is the fringe. I have this highlighted because we have not been spending this much so far. So one question on my list is how come it's been under budget? So it might be just an issue of where Heather gets some fees once a year rather than quarterly. So I want to double check that because I have,
Is there a fiscal year?
it's the calendar year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe-
Yeah, so I got to go back and look through what happened last year or
Why
whatever,
do you have that?
because the year's not over yet. So I don't know what the actual is yet. So that's why I just have it highlighted in yellow.
What's that?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah.
I mean, it's small, it's not gonna, they're not gonna pay attention to it. but
Yeah.
you know, the actual-
Mhm. Okay,
I guess it's the same as how like.
yeah. Well, we have paid some stuff, we just don't know what yet. Yeah, so I'll get that number. So this is the programs, so originally we had budgeted 135, thinking we'd do Hudson Roots and then give out competitive grant. We decided that we're gonna pause the grant part So we've done the 35,000 to Hudson Roots. I'm suggesting like 140 for next year. Kind of a ballpark number, but. And then contingency, we budgeted 5,000. I've spent a little under 170, and that's been for Adobe software that I've needed for all this stuff.
Get those trifold printouts out of that.
That's, yeah, I haven't used that yet, but I should add that in. So I was gonna suggest 3,000 for next year. Wait,
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
don't go loud.
Because they're the more program.
yeah,
Right,
and if you have that money now, you know, not in budget for it, you save.
Yeah. okay,
Um,
okay. I think too, just to keep on your radar is, so right now, the city put out an RFP for a new comprehensive plan. And we're going through the process of looking at firms right now. And they'll be doing engagement over the course of next year. So there'll also be a chance for us to kind of like tag on with housing engagement with their work too.
And you'll have to pay for that.
Sorry,
Who would have-
not out of this budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's out of the
That's
city.
not-
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Okay. So your suggestion was, what do you say, keep it at 5?
just keep it the same thing. Yep.
No, I'm not okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on this before I move on? Okay. And so this is a little less important because this is like the kind of looking at a couple of years that we have to submit to for HCPA, we have to submit like a 5-year, or I think 4-year, sorry, 4-year. This is obviously subject to change, but just want to kind of show you where my thinking is in terms of we are still, this is where we're started 2023 with. This is what it looks like we're going to expend roughly around there. So we'd be carrying over at 488. So this 25,000, the city still has to pay. That's what the VA promised last year. That's already guaranteed. This 15 is me thinking maybe we'll get something by December from our different outreach efforts. I think 15,000 is a decent goal. And so then basically you're looking at how our starting balance decreases each year because our seed funds for the grant are going to decrease, but we still, hopefully, if we're looking at getting maybe, 80,000 from the lodging tax next year and maybe 50 from banks or IDA, and also looking at putting this amount in a higher interest account so we can make some more money off interest as well. And then the operational cost would be pretty much on track. Well, I'll increase this, the contingency. And looking at increasing program grants a little bit, and these would be increasing a little bit. So any thoughts on that?
Good.
Again, this is, we have to hand something in. This is going to change, obviously.
Yeah.
But okay.
It's a good start, and that's like, that's where you can do, if you know that you come in low this year.
Yeah.
If you get to the BEA meeting, Heather's trying to push you on something, or the BEA is trying to push you on
Yeah.
something. There's your bargaining place. You know, lower the contingency a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
start by keeping it in place, I would say.
Okay. So then these are kind of the questions I have that I want to like kind of get determined over the next couple of weeks. So determine.
Can you move it over a little bit?
I think that's the project, oh, there.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to again figure out my exact fees for my fringe amounts. HCPA, we owe them the 10,000, so I want to get that transfer done. That's for the bookkeeping and counting and everything. This was want to check in with Heather about when we'd get that 25,000. Look at the actual contingency with the printing cost in there. And then the big thing I really am interested in, what's a good budget for Hudson Roots for next year?
Do we get a report from them? on How they're spending it?
Oh, Hudson Roots?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can we see that? No, probably not.
Yeah, I. see.
I mean, we don't even have to get that.
Email it to
Yeah,
us.
Okay.
Right now.
Sure,
And
sure,
we can, before the next, before you give us this, we can make it.
yes. So I was gonna,
Oh, yeah.
I'm meeting with Joni from Promise Neighborhoods because she has been saying that there was a lot of funds that came online for housing assistance during the pandemic, and they've all pretty much dried up. And by this point, this is one of the only ones that's out there. And she's been seeing an increase in need. So I want to talk to her and kind of get a sense of like, we have the list of who's been helped. I want to get an understanding of what's kind of the context around people's situations or what trends is she seeing, and maybe is this something we want to put more money in next year? Especially since we have a lot of development projects in the works, but we're 2 years out or 3 from having some actual units. So maybe we want to put more money into emergency assistance in the time being. So I'll meet with her and kind of get her point of view and kind of hear what her pitch is for what she wants to see there. And then I'll also we're going to do that next week. So then I can kind of pass that along with you all for like a updated budget. So we spent $35,000. Well, we gave them $35,000 for 2023. So we gave half of it in January or February, and then we gave the second half in June. And so they've been trying to spend that accordingly and make that last through the year. If you want to give me a second, I can pull up the most recent report.
Do you have a recommendation on it?
I mean, the thing is, like, I think her point of view is as much as they can get of what they need, because there's so much need.
Sure.
So I think, we have to, like, we could spend all the money on rental assistance, but like, what's the most judicious way of, where's that sweet spot of like, this can really help people through a crisis, and where's the rest that can go towards supporting some other projects that might be coming up in the next year or so, in terms of something that could yield development for 12 families or 50 families, whatever. That's a hard equation of clear emergency need now versus something a little bit hazier, but more long lasting down the road.
For the purposes of the budget hearing, as well as the larger community, I think it'd be great if you could also give us a list or whatever narrative of what you've done. Because I think a lot of people have no clue how much you've done, and it would be really impressive.
Okay. Do that. I'll start that something.
You gave them 35,000, right?
Yes.
Total.
For 2023, yeah. That was from the Housing Trust Fund. From the like ADLN grant, I think they got, I want to say 15,000 last year, or 21,000.
You mean for the years or for
Just Promise for Hudson Roots.
The
Yeah.
reason I asked, I don't know if we have for this one, but it's suggested. I don't know what that means, but it's 50,000 at least that'll get to 25 for 6 months since we're doing January.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Okay.
not be over the top.
Yeah. And the other piece too, we've been also working more with, or trying to work more with the courts and kind of prevent the actual eviction. I reached out to Jamie, the court clerk, to get some more updated numbers, and I hadn't gotten them, but it seems that we're on track to be much lower than we have been historically for eviction rate.
who's doing that? Like,
Well, me and Joan Hunt have been talking with like Judge Cheryl Roberts and John Connor and their clerk Jamie, just kind of get,
So the clerk is keeping track or trying to.
yeah.
Good.
And then Joan, like Promise and her team have been a little bit more involved in when there's been evictions come up, they've been able to talk with the landlord and the tenant and use some Hudson Roots money, but also kind of get an agreement with the landlord to keep them out of the eviction court in the first place.
So I apologize because I have to run, but just thinking about the Hudson Roots and how like direct impact that program is.
Yeah,
That just seems like one, and I don't know if you've ever tried this before, if it's possible, but that seems like that could be a great program to try to get matching funds for from donors and organizations, whether it's Hudson River Bank Trust,
Mhm.
Frisch Econic, Spark of Hudson, because that's like, you know, we're putting in 50, if you put in 50, if they put in 50, then all of a sudden it's like, you can literally say that this many people
yeah,
will be able to stave off eviction, will be able to
That's
keep their
fine.
homes, will be able to do that one. Or if we go to them, any of those people for just an outright $50,000 donation, they may be more reticent to do that, but with a program like that, we could, if that's where we could allocate a little more,
Mhm.
get those matching funds that could save us money.
That's
Another part of the budget.
And then I was thinking more like in thinking about going to these things, I was thinking more about asking for like an annual, you know,
Yeah.
an annual commitment.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but obviously.
Well, I'm sure that Joni would love to say that they know that for the next 2 years, they have this much money to plan out, to schedule that.
That's why I think it's important to. Having, you know, narrative what they've done.
yeah, yeah. And I think too, we've been an increase, I think, from what like the mayor and I have been hearing from people more in the past 2 weeks or so, just rent increases or struggling with housing costs and stuff, and just the struggle people have jumping through all the hoops of like certain, you know, some more like formal support systems. Like there's a lot of people we've been hearing from who make too much money to qualify for like DSS assistance, but they need a little bit extra. And I think as long as like those banks and stuff are fine with our process, like
Yeah.
Promise has, you know, more flexibility to help people than some of the other ones. And I think, yeah, I think so.
Is there anything people around before I sneak in?
No, no.
Okay.
Thank you,
everybody.
Nick. Good
Yeah.
to see you. So yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest questions that like the biggest items really to think about for the August meeting is like how much do we want to try to put to Hudson Roots. The other things on my list, so also talking to Sarah Black just to make sure she's the HCPA coordinator, just to make sure that that 10,000 number seems to work for HCPA in terms of covering the bookkeeping and accounting and the audits, the huge ticket item. Continue talking to other housing trust funds. We talked about this at the last meeting, but I've been doing a lot more research, and it really seems to me that like for cities of our size, the really best way of spending the money is finding 1 or 2 projects, and just really putting in a chunk of money to help that project get off the ground. So for example, like Great Barrington has been working with Habitat, you know, and putting, they'll help cover some soft costs for initial things that Habitat could acquire some land and, you know, I think 12 homeownership opportunities or something like stuff like that. And so I had like early feelers for some different projects of like what that could look like. And so I'm kind of keep working on that front. I think I was kind of like getting a little bit more on the sense of, so
Well, I'm curious,
yeah.
Jeff. The name of the company, Mattio? Or Macro? No, Macro. Have they, I noticed the other night in your meeting, they didn't really talk about some of the other properties at all. Like the smaller HCDPA properties.
Gotcha.
Are they gonna include those or?
Or we're gonna make a decision because, we need to decide because we don't, until October. We'll have to pay it.
Mhm.
I personally don't think we need that right now. We may use them in the future, but I don't think we need them if we go what we're planning. Stay true.
Right.
Mhm.
The ability of the personality. That was part of, that was
Right. Just for example, that little property across the street, which Habitat was once interested in. Maybe we could help them develop that into a smaller project
Yeah,
if you're gonna use it.
who, who was it?
Habitat,
Oh,
Habitat.
yeah, I mean, something like that we could actually.
and that, you know, and I think that's a fair question, I think, once we get our, and I actually will press them about it, but once we get our, and start looking at our timeline. And they know I want to go too, because it's one of the board, we want to make sure that if we're gonna spend the 25,000, we'll spend it, we need to know about.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, no, I think we need to,
that's good.
You know, what about the project helping families that already have existing housing?
Yeah, the homeowner grant.
Yeah.
So we are hopefully putting out some of those projects to bid this week. So we had 5 that were selected for round 1. 2 of them are a little bit simpler, so we're trying to put those out to bid. The other 3 are a little more complicated. So we need an engineer and a long story. You have to give 30 days from the city in order to procure an engineer. We had to wait a month. So that one's a little bit delayed, but once we finish in August, hopefully we can get the bids out and then we can go to our round 2 funding. 'Cause then we'll know how much funds we have left. Yeah, it's slow moving, but it's going.
General guidelines of fortunate funds like percent of on housing stuff and 50% on development.
No, yeah, I think,
I should think that should be part of the next round of discussion.
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like, so we had that 140 number, right, in the budget for grant for programs. And like, we could make that higher realistically, or kind of borrowing against the future. But let's say we work with 140. I think the question is how much of it do you want to give to emergency now? And then, yeah, how much? So that's kind of what to think about. And I guess my question is, what information do you want or need to help you make that decision?
I would really, you're gonna email out.
Yeah.
Or from
Mhm.
that information, I need to
Okay.
figure out, like, yeah, what reader amount.
You also like memorize like some of the things, like not ever like a formal report, but just like one. I think it's helpful to like the data, you know, like here's this way that getting the what just like how those kinds of things. Just to
Yeah.
build nuance,
Okay, yeah, can do that. So just kind of like some of these things we're discussing. Okay, gotcha. Cool. And I just wanted to show this. So one of the housing trust funds I talked to is in Malden, Massachusetts. They're a lot bigger than us, but they have this, like their funding policies and procedures, and it's very simple. It's really like a little introduction, but then just eligible activities, funding thresholds, allocation, and their application process. And this is kind of what we were looking at with our grant guidelines, like we had that score chart. I think this is kind of, I mean, we were kind of reverse engineering of like, what do we value, and then kind of make the procedures based on that. But I think also like working on this in the fall of just like having our own of like, what are our funding thresholds? So one of the things I've been trying to talk to them about, like these other housing trust funds, is like, what do you need to see before you fund a project? Like, how concrete does it have to be? Because you want to find that balance between it's not so concrete that doesn't need your money to happen, but it's not so fluffy that it could dissolve and never actually happen. And so, you know, like they're requiring to see the underwriting, the pro forma, but you know, they need some help filling in for acquisition or whatever. They have like a climate resiliency requirement and preferences, and then they have, you know, the procedures, like how does it actually happen to go through an application and the review and approval. So I think also putting something like this together, can be helpful for us as well. So. That's all I had. Any other thoughts, questions, anything?
That's where what you're speaking of. I mean, there's just at this right now that makes sense for project, like large project rather than
Yeah,
little.
yeah. Like a tightrope of helping people who are kind of drowning right now, but then also trying to
Right,
create.
well, because
Yeah.
you're not.
Yeah. Mhm.
Also feel like over time, I think that it feels like more immediately, like more immediate, things like that. To be real. Now it seems like a bit more of a larger
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
That way, or that's a little, but
yeah, yeah.
but
yeah.
I feel like we should something. That's check the balance with ourselves so that doesn't
Mhm.
we don't feel like spend the money fast.
Right.
Which is important.
Right, which is, it's also, there's like a lot of stuff that's, probably could happen maybe in the next year or two or potential
Yeah.
sites, so yeah, so,
Remember when, the last school board meeting, the two of you came with the mayor to discuss the school?
Yeah.
So, you know what's happening with that?
I know that the last developers out of fiction.
So my question, how come Hudson didn't buy that? Like all the offices could be put in, even,
Two reasons. One, the pandemic happened and we thought we were $1.5 million in red. So there was not an opportune time to buy it. And secondly, somehow the momentum is just lost during that period, I mean, it's still a possibility.
yeah, it's also the school district needs a pretty big price tag.
Yeah, they're asking a lot of money for it.
no, I know.
Yeah. So, and I
It's
think,
not, it's not completely off the table.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
and I think right now, until they get a new superintendent, that,
Yeah, it's hard.
Well,
to-
they're gonna have a new superintendent, there's already one. Soon we're gonna be voting.
oh, really?
Yeah, I heard that they have
Oh.
some kind of, yeah.
Oh, cool. Cool. That's
Yeah.
good.
They have to, there's time. Has to be done within a certain amount.
Oh, really? I mean,
But that building seemed so, when I found out there was 2 basements with elevators and.
Well, it's just one elevator.
one
That is-
elevator,
But yeah, no, it
I
has a
said,
lot of
wow,
opportunity.
that had so much potential.
Yeah. And it's an option.
It's an option.
Okay, I'm gonna conclude the meeting at 6:56 unless any public comments or questions, Carol? Nope. Okay,